Good evening, Santa Cruz, and welcome to Voices from the Village, Community Television's longest-running public affairs talk program. I am your slightly out-of-breath host, Sandino Gomez, and I'm here with a wonderful panel to talk about a really exciting opportunity to transform a large section of our North Coast into a national monument and really increasing a lot of access to kind of public access to these amazing lands, a lot of really kind of interesting work going on behind the scenes right now to raise a lot of money, get the political will and capital mustered. And we're going to talk with three really excellent guests tonight who are far more informed on this. So I'm really looking forward to learning alongside you. I want to remind you this is a live television show. So if at any point you guys have a comment or you want to ask a question of our guests, please feel free to participate. I'm sure the number will be flashing on your screen any moment now or throughout the program. So please do feel free to call in and let us know what you think. But before we launch into this whole topic, let me just quickly introduce our guests. To my right, we have Fred Keeley, quite an accomplished gentleman, many different hats he's worn over the years. I've worn a couple hats with him at certain times.
Absolutely, yes.
Very fun. Welcome, Fred.
Thank you, Sandino. Nice to see you again.
Yeah. And to Fred's right, we have Laura Kasa.
Hi there.
Welcome. Yeah.
Thank you. Really glad to be here. Really glad to be part of this campaign.
Cool. And you're involved in the campaign?
In the campaign, yes.
Great.
So I've been brought on just recently to help engage the public in this effort.
Cool. Excellent. And then I see we have, to Laura's right, we have Stephen Reed. He is the campaign manager. Which campaign are we referring to specifically?
This is the campaign for Santa Cruz Redwoods National Monument.
Okay. This is the Redwoods National Monument. Great. Well, why don't you summarize that a little bit for our viewers?
Well, the campaign itself is an effort to try to coalesce the community, the business community, the school community, the nonprofits, governments, and the general public to support the monument and to persuade President Obama to make the designation to create the national monument in Santa Cruz.
And what exactly would that mean, like a national monument? How's that different than like a state park or kind of other sort of like parkland or something?
Well, they're dramatically different in sort of ownership and operation. National monuments, there are some 116 of these in the country currently, and a list of communities that are also vying to create other national monuments around the country right now. They're under federal ownership. Bureau of Land Management, Department of Forestry, various agencies can own and operate a national monument. In this particular case, we've asked the Bureau of Land Management to take ownership, possession, and create the management plan for the Santa Cruz Redwoods National Monument. So our job right now is, again, to sort of work with the Bureau of Land Management, with the community and all sectors of the community to generate better understanding about what a monument is, what it will do, how it will work, to get support in the community that then is transferred to Congress and to the Department of Interior and to the White House, hopefully before President Obama leaves office.
Certainly. Yeah. Great. And I guess, what are some of the forces behind or some of the organizations and individuals, I guess, behind? I know, Fred, you've been involved as sort of a spokesperson, if I understand correctly, or correct me if I'm wrong.
Actually, my involvement comes from being president for a couple of years of the Semper Virens Fund.
That's right.
And we're a nonprofit organization that was founded in 1900 and operates only in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and we work with willing private property owners who want to either adopt a conservation easement on their property or want to sell their property. And what we do is that we work to assemble significant portions of redwood forests and make sure that redwoods and their habitat are able to continue on, because redwoods exist in a very, very narrow band, and we're at the southern end of that band, and it goes up into Oregon. And so we operate in the Santa Cruz Mountains only. And we have been interested in the National Monument designation for property known as the Coast Dairies, which is 5,800 acres that for over 100 years was a dairy, not surprisingly, and in the ownership of a Swiss family. And then a few years ago, they sold it to the Nature Conservancy, and they were able to take that land and develop a management plan for how you could preserve and protect the most delicate and fragile aspects of that property, including the redwood forests and the coastal meadows areas and so on. And then they donated that land to the Bureau of Land Management.
Wow.
And as Steve has indicated, that's why the land is now eligible for designation by either Congress or the President as a national monument. And Sempervirens Fund is very involved in that, as is the Sierra Club and the Packard Foundation, the Moore Foundation, the Santa Cruz Mountain Bike Association. All kinds of folks are very much stepping forward to support this designation as a national monument for the Coast Aries property.
Great. And so is that different and distinct from the CEMEX property?
It is actually.
Okay,
There's CEMEX property right now. The only CEMEX property there is the actual former cement plant.
Right.
The forested land above that and around that is called the San Vicente Forest, and it was purchased from CEMEX by Sempervirens, the Santa Cruz County Land Trust, and a number of other folks got together and purchased that land. So that land is now in permanent conservation.
Awesome.
Although there are three aspects of the San Vicente Forest: pure 100% conservation, another about third of it for recreation, for hiking and that kind of thing, and about a third of it for what are called working lands, for very limited timber harvesting activities. And the funds from that go to support the conservation and the recreation activities on the property. And that is not what we're talking about when we talk about the Coast Aries property.
Okay.
That is a different property on the north
A little
coast.
further north and kind of
Right.
different and distinct.
Uh-huh.
And then, if I understand correctly, there's the Super Park campaign. That's also different and
It's called the
distinct?
Great Park.
The Great Park, okay.
And
It's going to be super if we get it.
it'll be super if we get it, that's right. And that's an
That's a whole-
enterprise that's been underway for a number of years, again involving willing private property owners who would like to either donate their land and get a tax advantage out of that, or put a conservation easement on that land, or sell the land outright to either Sempervirens or another one of the nonprofits that are putting together the Great Park. And where that idea comes from is this: up until about maybe 10 or 15 years ago, the way to deal with land conservation was kind of like looking through a straw at various properties. And now the idea is that the most successful way to engage in land conservation is on what's called a landscape scale. So really look at the habitat that is provided for flora and fauna in that area, see where there are opportunities for connectivity, and if you interrupt that connectivity, then the natural systems start to break down. So the Great Park, the San Vicente Forest, the Santa Cruz Redwoods National Monument are all based on that concept of connectivity of these landscape scale properties that can be brought together in a way that we can steward that land so that it's available for enjoyment for future generations, essentially untouched in terms of its environmental values.
Yeah. It seems to make a lot of sense, because I know when you're dealing with a lot of flora and fauna, like habitat fragmentation is a huge problem, and critters and plants aren't able to kind of interbreed and keep the diversity of the populations going. So I did look on the website of the Sempervirens Fund. It looks really like an amazing sort of project. But
Thank you.
yeah. Back to the campaign, though, for the, just in case we get a phone call here. Back to the campaign around the National Monument with the Coast Aries property. Laura, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about sort of your involvement, how you got involved, and sort of how you're supporting the campaign.
Sure. Well, I must say I was very fortunate to be recruited to be a part of this campaign. Very excited to be a part of something that's a larger effort than just sort of what I've been doing at Save Our Shores, which is a very local effort. I really wanted to sort of take that next step up in my career, and this is such an opportunity to do that, to engage the community, which I've been working with so closely, sort of on the sea side of things. Now I'm on the trees side of things. And I just really appreciate that opportunity. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time out in the community, going and speaking to different groups, service organizations, also engaging the local governments, because we really want to have all the local governments supporting this and being on record that they support this. And that's what's really going to convince the president to designate our site. As Steve mentioned, there are so many other communities around this country that say, hey, we have a great place and we'd love you to sign off and make this a national monument. I really believe that this property is a national treasure, and we should work with the community to demonstrate that. And I think what I've been experiencing is people really were amazed at the kickoff and the number of people that attended that kickoff and sort of the pep rally feel and how excited everyone was. And I think maybe some people think it's a done deal, and it's clearly not. What we need is we need people to go to the website, and I'm sure that's going to be shown during this evening's program. It's very simple to just pledge your support and sign the petition to get this designation.
That's SantaCruzRedwoods.org? Okay, great.
That's SantaCruzRedwoods.org.
SantaCruzRedwoods.org.
You're
Okay.
right. No, you're right.
Is that SantaCruzRedwoods.org?
One word.
SantaCruzRedwoods.org. Ah.
And it's right here on these stickers that we have. And we have these lovely buttons that Fred's wearing.
So there is an online petition.
Great, yeah.
And it's a simple
About mobilizing
petition.
support.
I support the creation of the monument. This campaign is not about fundraising. It's not about lots of meetings. It's not about sort of planning and annexing sort of other agencies to this. It's a very simple ask. Is this a good idea?
I mean,
and most people say, yeah, this is a great idea.
Like you said, that sounds like the property's acquired. It's in BLM hands.
Right.
It's really just about getting that designation and that political will at this point.
I'd like to make a point about the property has been acquired. I first moved to Northern California 45, 50 years ago and landed in San Jose briefly before landing in Santa Cruz. And Santa Clara County had always made a very, very significant point about land preservation and stewardship of resources and so forth. But in hindsight, I think you can see easily, they weren't able to accomplish it. They got overtaken by growth from Silicon Valley and from San Francisco to the south. And they really weren't able to preserve either their hillsides or their verdant valleys and whatnot. And the money that came to acquire this, this acreage, this national treasure, basically came from foundations and donors over there, over the hill in Santa Clara County and, and beyond. It's been given to us as a gift. Our taxes aren't going up as a consequence of acquiring these properties. The money came from the private sector. It purchased the property from other private owners at fair market value, and it was given to us to preserve, to enhance, and to make accessible. It's a great gift. It's a great way to start. We're not raising money. The money's been raised to acquire the property. The money's been raised to do a biotic study and an initial management plan. We're just here trying to ask this community to support it and answer the one question: do you think this is a good idea?
Makes sense.
Thank you.
What kind of, where are you guys seeing your ability to put more pressure, be more effective? Are you really looking towards Presidente, or are we looking more towards El Congreso?
Well, actually,
because either one can do it, right?
Actually, we're doing, and we are doing both. I think a lot of people think that we're represented in Santa Cruz County in the United States House of Representatives by Sam Farr, and that's true. Sam represents a lot of the Central Coast, but actually the North Coast of Santa Cruz County is represented by Anna Eshoo.
Right.
And Congresswoman Eshoo has introduced a House resolution to have the coast dairies designated by Congress as a national monument. Now, I don't think Congresswoman Eshoo thinks any more than we do that that's likely to happen with a Republican-controlled Congress. They're not real excited about these national monument designations. They're excited about it, but not in a favorable way. And so,
unless there's tax cuts involved or something.
But what's helpful about the introduction of that House resolution by the Congresswoman is that it provides a framework for a discussion with folks such as the folks in Davenport and Bonnie Doon and so on, who have a set of very legitimate concerns. What about traffic? What about increased impact in their neighborhoods? What happens to the businesses in Davenport and so on? And what that lets us do is have a place for that conversation, so that the Congress member can make sure that when the national monument designation gets made, which we think will happen by President Obama, there's a set of working instructions here for how that should be managed by the Bureau of Land Management. So she's playing a very important role.
Yeah.
I mentioned just before you got here that one of the ways I met you is in your series of campaigns on behalf of Senator Monning over the years. And we're very lucky to have Supervisor Coonerty, Assemblymember Stone, Senator Monning, Congressmember Eshoo, Senator Boxer, Secretary of the Natural Resources Agency, John Laird, one of our guys,
hometown hero.
and Governor Brown, all supporting this,
Wow.
in addition to the 1,500 people that showed up at the Kaiser Permanente kickoff that included former Interior Secretary Bruce Babbitt.
Right.
So we think there's a very wide, very deep potential base of support, which we've tapped into a bit. And now by being able to recruit Laura Kasa, having Amanda Robinson, having Steve run the campaign, that we've got the capacity to reach out into neighborhoods, business community, nonprofits, environmental organizations, and so on, to be able to get the wide, deep base of support that the White House looks at when it makes a determination whether or not to have a national monument designation.
Cool. So tell any of you guys who wanted to say any highlights from the kickoff event. I know that was held at the Permanente Arena, 1,500 people. That's huge.
It was quite a surprise.
Yeah.
Quite a surprise.
What kind of went down, and who were the folks? And also, I couldn't help but notice that Sam Farr's name was absent in your list of politicos.
Let me just quickly add, the only reason for that, it's not that he's absent in the issue, he doesn't represent that area.
So,
the national monument area we're talking about, Coast Areas, is entirely represented by Congresswoman Anna Eshoo.
But he could co-sponsor the bill, right?
Absolutely,
Okay,
and he's fully supportive of the idea. I just wanted to make clear.
And that's another benefit of having that legislation, is it gives all of us an opportunity to seek co-authorships, co-sponsorships for the bill, giving us an opportunity to go talk to other members about Monterey Bay, about the marine sanctuary, about the proximity of this monument, about the synergistic opportunities between the monument, the state parks, the national marine sanctuary, and so forth.
And it wouldn't just benefit Santa Cruz County. I mean, obviously, like surrounding regions would be able to benefit from this monument and enjoy the lands just as much as a Santa Cruz resident would.
Which is what I'm planning on doing, is really going into, say, Monterey County, Santa Clara County, and talking to those contacts that we have to ask for their support as well. Because certainly if there's a national monument in our backyard, people are going to be coming here, especially if it's so close to the coast. So yes, we'll be tapping into that.
Awesome. What was the highlight from the kickoff event?
Well, for me, the highlight was being able to invite, and then he accepted the invitation, President Clinton's Secretary of the Interior, Bruce Babbitt, who has come to our community many, many times. He did when he was Secretary of the Interior, and he's a real friend, I think, of the Central Coast. And he was formerly the governor of Arizona. His family has very long-standing roots in the northern Arizona area in Flagstaff. They were one of the founding families that helped establish Arizona as a state. He has a real deep understanding of the values of the West. And coming here to Santa Cruz to help us kick off this National Monument campaign, I think really highlighted what a special property the Coast Dairies property is, and how fortunate we will be if a national monument designation is made by the president.
Cool. Good old Bruce Babbitt.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, you kind of also mentioned a little bit of sort of like neighbors' concerns, and I'm just curious kind of what some of the feedback that you've heard from the community, and perhaps in like opposition or concerns that people have, and like if you guys have any responses to any of the concerns that you've heard. And you mentioned like traffic, and
let me say a couple of things.
Pretty notorious for not wanting a lot of change. Or
well, let me say a couple of things about it.
There, so
first of all,
just curious.
First of all, if there was a national monument designation proposed for the area I live in Santa Cruz on Market Street, I would say, tell me more about that. I need to hear about this. How many people are coming? What's going on? What is it going to do to me? What's it going to do to my neighbors? Those are very legitimate set of concerns that people would have. There need to be answers to those. What we have done is said, and that is the campaign, has said, we are campaigning in favor of the designation. And we have then said the local elected officials, from county supervisor through the state legislature, through to Anna Eshoo in Congress, those are the folks who can and will, because they're supporting the National Monument designation, make sure that the legitimate concerns that folks in Davenport and Bonnie Doon have are actually addressed.
Yeah.
Steve doesn't have, Laura doesn't have, I don't have the ability to say, yeah, we'll get you some more highway patrol coverage, or yeah, we'll make sure there's a medevac helicopter available, or yes, we'll make sure that somebody goes around and picks up the trash. That's not within our purview or ability. But what's wonderful about having every elected official who represents Bonnie Doon and Davenport, from county supervisor to the United States Senate and the governor of California, are saying, we'll take responsibility for that part to make sure that those issues are addressed satisfactorily.
Makes sense. Yeah. What else?
Well, I think there's a question to be asked, what does it mean if you get a national monument designation?
I'm curious,
what's the difference?
Right.
I know Steve and Laura know a lot about that.
That's a great question. 'Cause, it's status now, how accessible is it, and how would that change with the monument?
I think
That's
the
a great
first
way
thing
to
is
think about it.
taking a look at the property as it stands now, which is to say it's been closed for almost 100 years to the public.
Wow.
People know it only from driving north and south on Highway 1, generally speaking. And what you see from the highway is but, I don't know, 30 or 40% of what the property really represents. What you see when you're driving along Highway 1 or cycling along Highway 1 are the rolling prairies, the grasslands, and basically the vista points that overlook Monterey Bay and the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. As you continue east or up above those grasslands, what you find are distinctly different environments. Deep, deep canyons, riparian corridors, healthy redwood stands, and 6 completely separate, distinct watersheds on that property. All of those watersheds are key to the agricultural successes that we have. They're key in terms of runoff to the health and vitality of the bay. So it's a really magnificent piece of property that has a lot of varied opportunities. The monument status basically says this property will not only become accessible to all of us at no fee, but enhanced trails will be created over time. So we have better access to experience these unique ecosystems up close and personal. We're going to do so with the primary responsibility being protecting the riparian corridors and protecting those water courses, because in fact they represent our drinking water, they recharge our aquifers, they support the agricultural lands on the north coast and so forth. So there's an access, there's an enhancement of the visitor serving experience. It will be a day use area. There won't be overnight camping. We don't have to, hopefully worry about campfires and ruination as a consequence of that. And like most national monuments, and I think in my experience, many people that I speak with have been to national monuments in their travels through life, and their simple takeaway is, it was great. I like it. It's a spectacular, in every case, a spectacular environment, a unique set of resources. They're clean. They're kept that way by the people who respect the land, which is, say, the users. And it's an all-around sort of great experience. We in Santa Cruz have a history of using parcels like this that are convenient and accessible for outdoor educational opportunities. And we expect that the school systems that we're talking to right now will want to be taking advantage of those to look at flora and fauna and rare plants and animals and how they interact and support one another, and in fact why these watersheds remaining healthy are so important to our drinking water, to our agriculture, and to our marine ecosystems.
I remember being a kid and definitely going on some hikes. Had a really enlightened 6th grade teacher who took us on hikes and just really learned to appreciate a lot of the nature out there. And I know how valuable that could be just from first-hand
And this
experience.
is so convenient.
Right up the coast, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I think there's one other issue perhaps about why would a national monument
yeah.
be an advantage to the community. The Bureau of Land Management now owns the property,
Right.
which is to say we own it. It's the federal government, and ultimately we are the federal government.
Managing it on our behalf.
And a lot of folks wonder, gee, Bureau of Land Management, and what are they going to do with it? Well, there really isn't much going to be done with it unless there is a national monument designation. And the reason for that is because the Bureau of Land Management has holdings all over the United States. And when all of those lands compete in Congress for appropriations, for funding, they don't all get funded, not even close.
Right.
And when national monument designation is conferred on a property that the Bureau of Land Management owns, then it's essentially, like they say in foreign affairs, favored nation status. It's still Bureau of Land Management land, but it's now in this separate category of national monument. So when Anna Eshoo, Barbara Boxer, Dianne Feinstein, whoever succeeds Senator Boxer in the United States Senate, when they're advocating for allocations of funds for Bureau of Land Management properties in the state of California, those that are designated national monuments get preferential treatment, essentially.
Start higher up on the list,
So,
I'm sure. Yeah.
But let me hasten to add, that is no guarantee that there will be funding, but history teaches us that those properties get favored treatment. And so, as Steve was mentioning, to be able to have the most thoughtful way to have public access into that property, to be able to have the right areas for parking and bathrooms and trailheads and trash being able to be picked up, and the right places for a hiking path versus a biking path versus other areas that you shouldn't touch at all because they're so highly sensitive. To be able to actually make all that work is going to be predicated upon our ability to get some of our federal tax dollars brought back into this community.
Wouldn't that be nice?
And the best chance we've got at that is to have a national monument designation.
It just sounds like you're just polishing up what's already a real gem. And
I was just going to say,
Yeah,
kind of to add a
please.
little humor to the conversation. I was on Pacific Avenue today, gaining signatures, talking to people about the monument, raising the awareness about it, and just got some great feedback from people. In fact, one gentleman came up and said, "I don't get it. Why would you not be in favor of this?" And I said, exactly. So that was basically what most people were saying. But there were two interesting, when you asked before, Sandino, what's the opposition or what questions might people have? One gentleman said, well, if I go hiking there, I might have to worry about ticks, and I'm really concerned about that. And so I thought, okay, well, if that's the biggest concern, that's not a huge concern, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to go hiking, you do take that risk. And the other gentleman said, well, if you open it up and there's access and there's hiking trails, well, then I'd have to share the trail with everybody else instead of just being able to sneak in there and trespass. I said, well, that's not really allowed. So anyway, just a little humor on it. If those are the biggest issues we're hearing, I think we have pretty good support for this.
And so just to clarify, it is basically still closed to the public as a BLM property.
That's
And
right.
No access, really.
And if there is a national monument designation, then the Bureau of Land Management is required to work with the community to develop a plan about where the access points will be, what kind of facilities go in place, what kinds of restrictions there are, and so on. So that's another opportunity for the community at large, but especially in Davenport and Bonnie Doon, to make sure that their issues are addressed and addressed in a satisfactory manner.
Cool.
Generally, what happens if this is designated, this planning process ensues with BLM, sort of leading a community-based planning process. And sooner rather than later, they'll be announcing sort of a phased opening to the public. They want to get the land open and available as soon as they can, based on the limited resources they have initially, to monitor, secure, be safe, pick up trash, et cetera. So initially what you generally see are one or two very rural scale parking areas, decomposed granite. They're not paved, they're not lit at night, you know, there's no advertising and so forth.
Not that much different than what you'd see on the side of a lot of Highway 1 anyway.
You know, exactly. You'll see some interpretive signage. You'll see some initial trails. You'll see some restroom facilities, and that's just about it in the early phases.
Right.
Later, in terms of planning and other community support, and in this particular case, it's interesting that Secretary Laird and others have been mentioning the synergistic possibilities of visitor serving interpretive centers that might be on a state park property instead of on the national monument, or certainly not duplicated,
right.
et cetera. So this brings a cooperative planning process to bring sort of the best thinking from the state, the federal government, the community together to manage these resources, including the Wilder Ranch State Park and the state beaches and the monument, and hopefully in years to come, the Cemex property.
Right.
Well, Sandino, if I could just say,
go right ahead.
One of the things I'm excited about is that the Semper Virens Fund, we got into this issue a couple of years ago. We're part of something called the Living Landscape Initiative, which involves the Moore Foundation, the Packard Foundation, a number of others that look at these large landscape opportunities in California and in the western United States. And the National Monument idea came up around Coast Dairies and how important that would be once Coast Dairies was conveyed to the Bureau of Land Management. And what I got excited about was the quality of the team that wanted to step up and participate in this. In addition to our elected officials, vertically integrated from county supervisor to governor of the state of California, and points in between. Other folks, like Steve was associate vice president of CSU Monterey Bay, has worked on a number of projects over the years, and I went to him and I said, is there any chance we could get you to run this campaign? And he was excited about it. Laura has been, as people probably know, the executive director of Save Our Shores for 9 years, and took that organization from one which was a great organization at one time, kind of lost its way, and when she took over 9 years ago, took this thing to a huge new level, not only of protecting the beaches and cleaning up the beaches and that kind of thing, but single-use plastic bag bans, styrofoam bans, all kinds of other things. I went to her and I said, is there any chance we could get you to come on board on this campaign as the engagement director? She said, yeah, there is a chance we could do that. And same thing with Amanda Robinson, who's just a wonderfully bright and talented young woman in our community. And so the team that's been put together that's willing to step up is just like the elected official team, just like the people we meet all over Santa Cruz County who want to step up and be part of this. So it's a wonderful opportunity, I think, to take the best and the brightest of our community, put them together, and have them all pulling in the same direction for this national monument designation.
Sounds like you got a real good team, and certainly I've learned a lot right now. I hope you've learned a lot, Santa Cruz. I do want to remind you, this is a live call-in show. Oh geez, the date is the 22nd of March, and you can see that number right there, 831-425-8848, extension 30. If you have any questions or comments, you want to throw your 2 cents into the ring. We got 4 wonderful people here who would be happy to take your call. And yeah, it's just, we are talking again about the kind of campaign to create a national monument with the Coast Dairies property just up the coast from the lovely town we all reside in. Well, not all of us reside in Santa Cruz, but the lovely county that we reside in here in Santa Cruz County. So yeah, we're talking with Stephen Reed, Laura Kasa, and Fred Keeley about, and kind of associated issues as well. I'm going to probably pick you guys' brains about a couple other North Coast things as well. But kind of, I'm curious in terms of like what's next for the campaign. Like, what are you guys planning? You had the big kickoff event, 1,500 people. That's awesome. SantaCruzRedwoods.org. People can find a little info there, I'm sure. But why don't you tell us kind of any of you guys, what's coming up? What's next on the agenda? What should we look forward to? Where can people learn more info, get involved?
There's sort of two major thrusts that we're sort of engaging in right now, and I'll let Laura talk about the engagement part a little later. The other, I mean, right when I'm finished. The other part is what I call the hand in glove, which is while we are generating increasing amounts of public awareness, public support, endorsements from businesses, the nonprofit communities, government agencies, and so forth, we're beginning to work very closely with the Department of Interior, the Bureau of Land Management, the Congresswoman's Office, and the advisors to President Obama about how is it that you want this support that we are generating here to be presented towards the end of that campaign, to make sure that we understand the formats, the forms, we understand our competition. The fact of the matter is we're in a competitive environment. There are dozens of communities around the United States right now trying to bring monument status to some of their prized properties. I would say that in addition to the all-star team and the support that we've got from great representatives, from the Congresswoman and our neighboring Congressman Farr, to the governor, and to John Laird, and to Mark Stone and Bill Monning and Ryan Coonerty, et cetera, we've got the best product. That's all there is to it. I mean, this is not selling bad soap. I mean, we don't have any problems. We take hikes on the property from time to time with BLM, and at any given time you're seeing peregrine falcons and red-tailed hawks and mountain lions, and it's just an absolute pleasure to see the fact that, for better or worse, again, this property was closed for 77 years, and now we've got a chance to walk the land and what it's all about. It will sell itself. It certainly did with Secretary Babbitt. I had the pleasure of taking the hike with him the morning before the event, and he could spot a rare plant from 150 yards and tell us all about it, and would marvel at the sight of live, rare plants and animals, and again, the predatory birds that are flying over. It's just
sounds like we got a volunteer docent.
Yeah. I'd like to bring Mr. Babbitt back to do that too, because he knows it.
Sounds like
seen
he knows
it,
his stuff,
and I mean, the feeling that you get from people who are aware of the values of those property make it very, very clear. We've got a product that is beyond, I think, many of the other competing communities.
Yeah.
And then Laura, again, is sort of planning and working on reaching out to every single corner and cohort of this community.
And I agree with you, Steve. I really think this is akin to selling clean beaches and a healthy ocean. I mean, who is going to be against this?
I want some polluted bays. Yeah.
We are the community that established this Monterey Bay Sanctuary that I've been talking about for 9 years. That was an amazing feat, and what a wonderful place we live in. This is the land side of things. We've got this beautiful property. We really want everyone in the community, not just the usual suspects like some of our sponsors that are already environmental organizations, but we want to talk to the Rotary Clubs. We want to talk to the diversity centers. We want to get everybody engaged, because this property is for us and for future generations, which we're all a part of, right? So everybody should really have a stake in this. So I was brought on for sort of the phase 2, right? The phase 1 was the kickoff, which was a fantastic event. But as Steve said, we're in competition. And so we really have to demonstrate broad, diverse community support coming from businesses, coming from local governments, coming from NGOs, coming from individuals. So I can't emphasize enough how much we need people. It's such a simple ask, and yet I can't overstate it enough. We need people to sign that petition, and we need them to put it on their Facebook page.
Right.
And we need them to send it to their relatives that may live on the East Coast or in other countries. Certainly when we have a national monument here, people are going to want to come and see that. Yeah. So you don't have to be any specific age. Children can sign on to this. We had several kids today when we were downtown, because it's going to be for them.
Right.
So really, wherever you live, whatever age you are, you can sign on. You can own this. You'll see this will be there forever, and you'll say, I had a part in that. I made it happen.
And it's SantaCruzRedwoods.org, of course.
SantaCruzRedwoods.org.
I'm sure that's going to link to all the social media
What
there.
is it again?
It's SantaCruzRedwoods.org.
It's SantaCruzRedwoods.org.
One word, SantaCruzRedwoods.org.
Words become one
Works
word.
every time.
Good, thank you.
And it really, so far, has been a great experience and a community-based campaign.
Is this the actual?
This is the actual
going to be
property.
the whole monument here. Can we get a camera maybe to zoom in on that?
There we go.
Yeah. So let's Lily, maybe Fred, could you poke over here and just sort of define it a little bit for us? What's some
Okay, so this would be Davenport. Now we're heading south to Laguna Creek. We go up that way, go up into the Santa Cruz Mountains, and head across. And there's we've got Yellowbank Creek and Lydell East Branch, Lydell Creek West Branch, San Vicente Creek, and we get all the way over to Molina Creek and then down, almost to the ocean again, but and then it wraps around Swanton Road and back down to Davenport. So it's a it's 5,800 acres, and as Steve pointed out, some of it is what's called marine or coastal prairie. About 20 to 25% of it is actually various stands of redwoods of various generations, and our thought is that, and the thought of the people who are supporting this, is that by bringing this to a national monument status, that way that we enjoy the great outdoors in the Monterey Bay Area this will be made part of that. And I think the way we do that, and Steve's talked about it and Laura's talked about it, the way we do that in the Monterey Bay Area is by having a very respectful and light touch on the land, but we are in the land, enjoying the land, hiking. Some folks like to bike, some folks like to hike, some people like to picnic, some people like to take photographs. Students come out with their teachers to have outdoor education opportunities. That's the way we do things in the Monterey Bay Area. And so taking that community value and importing it by way of a national monument designation, we think has a lot of value to it.
Certainly looks like it. What are these other two little plotches? I guess so this is the San Vicente here, and then what are these other two? Just kind of private lands? Or
Those are agricultural
lands?
uses, as are the smaller
strips down
white
here?
strips at the
Yeah.
bottom. And so those ag-in holdings will remain ag-in holding, number one. And there's one other sort of slightly interesting concept that owes to the federal money that leaves the county, and some comes back and some does not.
Right.
This property, even though our taxes aren't going up for the acquisition, there's no fees for use, will generate revenue from the grazing rights that will remain. It's important for those grasslands to remain grazed for the protection of the native plants and grasses, and so that grazing activity generates tax revenue.
As long as it's not Clive and Bundy.
No.
As long as we got none of those deadbeats out there.
And I was going to mention that
That's a crazy case, actually. Sorry, I couldn't help but throw that in there.
Yeah, this campaign has really been, from the very, very start, a community-based campaign. And we asked, for instance, a group of students to consider helping us with our logo. And they came up with, with the logo for the National Monument. And the same group of students did the artwork for this really strikingly lovely poster. We hopefully will, blow it up. Yeah, they've. So it was really wonderful getting the input from students and not professional artists necessarily. They've done a great deal of work sort of writing about the Santa redwood trees. They've done photography, a lot of the graphic materials that you'll see on our website, which is santacruzredwoods.org.
Is it santacruzredwoods.org? All is one word, Santa Cruz Redwoods?
That's correct.
It's not separate words.
No.
Santa
Put 'em
Cruz
all together.
Redwoods and then dot.
3 words become
Dot.
one.
And then
.org.
dot
A
org.
lot of the graphic
It's like
material.
3 W's,
Right.
and then 3 words, and then .org.
Enormously helpful to
Very
understand
poetic
that.
the way
Makes
you
sense.
put that.
SantaCruzRedwoods.org.
Yeah, and so again, the graphic material that you'll see on that website,
It's sharp. I like the
a lot of
sticker.
it has come from students, from student photographers. It's really been, heartwarming and really fun to work with the students on the campaign. And we just want to keep, working with the schools and bringing ecological lesson plans into the K-12 schools here in Santa Cruz County.
Very cool.
And asking students, their parents, and their teachers to sign the online petition. The fact of the matter is this monument will belong more to them over the next decade than it will to us.
Yeah. Super beautiful.
And another, I think, interesting point, if you, let me see if I can get this. There we are, right there. So if you look at this, there's, on the top half, there's a number of pretty large organizations like the Packard Foundation and others and so on. But when you look at the lower half, what you see is Save Our Shores and Friends of Santa Cruz State Parks and Sierra Club locally and so on. But this one right here is the Amamutsan tribe, which is a designation of the tribal band of Native Americans that have had a presence on that land for literally thousands of years. And their tribal leader, the Amamutsan tribal leader, a gentleman by the name of Valentin Lopez, was at the National Monument kickoff. And he made a couple of points. One was we invited him, and he was very pleased to do it, to provide sort of the spiritual kickoff for this. And after he did that, he was making some remarks about it. And this is very important to the Native American Amamutsan tribal band in the Santa Cruz Mountains, because it is an opportunity to preserve that property intact in a way that they can recognize that is respectful of both their ancestors and the 7 generations forward concept in Native American culture. And so we're really pleased that Val Lopez and the Amamutsan tribal band are also very much engaged and wanting to see this national monument designation.
I can't help but respect folks that seek out a sort of indigenous, at least understanding or blessing of sort of projects, especially when it comes to land use and considering all the damage that's been done to indigenous peoples and the land that they depend on. Certainly that's a great co-sponsor for the campaign, and yeah, I see a lot of other great groups there as well. It's wonderful to think that.
And we want to add to that list.
Yeah,
that's our goal.
That's your job, right?
So if you're watching out there and you're a part of any type of group in this community and you want to be on that list, I believe my email is going to be shown on there.
Okay.
Just get in touch. I'd be happy to come and talk to any groups that want to learn more. I think your show tonight has been really informative for folks.
Absolutely.
And sometimes
I've
going
learned a lot.
and doing an in-person presentation. We have a PowerPoint presentation already put together, so we can go and bring that to really any size group. Happy to do that.
Is there any focused effort in schools in terms of like getting like science departments or other folks? Like how would interested teachers plug themselves in most effectively?
Certainly, and Steve can probably speak more to this, but we'd love that to happen. I know the timing might be a little difficult because we'd like to get the support soon, and we know that students and teachers already have projects lined up. But Steve does have some connections, as do I, and Amanda as well, and so we're going to be talking to those teachers and seeing if there's a way to maybe even design some projects around the National Monument and get them engaged in that way. Certainly at least getting their signatures and their family signatures.
Is there any effort to go to school boards? Or?
We're going to school boards. The last meeting that we were going to attend was canceled. I don't remember why, but we've got it rescheduled. And I think the key part for the school board conversation is the fact that what we have in mind, what we've been discussing with individual teachers, is how to align their curricular standards and curricular minimums with the work that we're doing. And certainly there's an awful lot of information that we're able to provide science teachers about the flora and fauna. We're able to talk to civics and social studies teachers about citizen engagement and the nature of this campaign. And in the upper grades, government relations and students of government, about the interaction of nonprofit boards like Semper Virens, a campaign such as ours, and this deliverable, the end game of this project, and how sort of government works to facilitate the will of the people. So we've got some curricular plans. We've certainly got an attempt to go through the school boards and simultaneously to reach out to individual teachers in K-12, because we may not have a chance to do this particular thing again.
Right.
I think one of the parts of the kickoff campaign, which as we've mentioned 100 times, has had 1,500 people at it. And one of the most exciting things, and I think very touching for a lot of people, was that 3 elementary schools had about 50 students each, so it was about 150 students. And what grades were they, Steve?
Well, they were 3 to 6.
3 to 6.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And they came and sang "This Land Is Your Land." And it was...
I hope they sang the subversive verses.
Yes, they did, actually.
Everyone knows the stands for you and me, but how many know about the sign that said no trespassing?
There we go. They sang all 3
all great. Good.
verses. And but I think for a lot of people, well, okay, we're going to hear from a Secretary of Interior, and we're going to hear from John Lair, we're going to hear from this and that. And,
Munchkin singing,
okay,
that's
fair
the real
enough.
highlight.
But the little guys singing, I mean, that just got everybody going. It was
Awesome.
great.
Totally fun.
Cool. We're getting towards the end of our show, and I do want to remind folks that this is a call-in. If you got questions burning, if you want to add your name to the growing list of organizations and/or individuals, please do call us up right now, 425-8848, extension 30. But before we give you guys the last word, Fred, I want to jump on you a little bit and just ask about the open space district you're working on. Very briefly, I know it's kind of related. Very briefly, we don't got to get too into it, but I just think open space, talking about kind of like parklands and more public access to things. Maybe you could just like touch on that really briefly, and then we can do some final words, anything you guys want to say before we got out. We got about 4 minutes or so.
Words in addition to SantaCruzRedwoods.org?
Oh, right.
Is that how it works?
That's not the open space district.
Santa Cruz Redwoods.
No.
Open space. So there are open space districts throughout California. The closest ones to us are the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority and the Mid-Peninsula Open Space District. What they are is they are a designation made by the legislature or by the local agency formation commission that establishes a county-wide open space district. What do they do? What they can do is whatever we want it to do in this community.
Hey.
And they are really enormously flexible. For example, up in Sonoma County, theirs is called the Sonoma County Agricultural Conservation and Open Space District. Cool. Because mostly what they want to do is agricultural conservation. We want to do that in the Pajaro Valley. Want to help the farmers be able to monetize that to relieve development pressure. In the Mid-County, North County, we want to do that for more like active and passive recreational opportunities. Up into the Santa Cruz Mountains, we want to do it for purely preservation reasons. So there will be about a year-long series of public meetings hosted by county supervisors, mayors, independent park districts, to make sure that we're clear on what the community wants this park district or open space district, what weight do they want it to carry. Right. Then there will be an election, at which time the voters will say yes or no to that.
Cool. And you're helping to convene the whole project.
Doing a little bit on it.
You wear many hats. And
that's
you
why
look good in them.
That's why I don't have
That's why you don't have a hair, because so many hats on and off all the time.
That's right.
Great. Well, that sounds like an exciting project, and I'm sure people will hear more about that in the future.
That's right.
Thanks for that effort. That sounds great.
You're welcome.
Any final words, guys? We're really kind of getting to the last few minutes. What did I forget to ask you, or what's on the tip of your tongue you're burning to say?
I am burning to say that I am so excited to be a part of this campaign and work with people like Steve and Fred. I mean, you can see how much fun we're having on this, but it's because we're so passionate. We love this community. Obviously, all 3 of us spent years working in this community to do great things, and so I'm really excited to be a part of this. I know we can make this happen, but we need everyone's support on this. So.
And where will they go again?
www.santacruzredwoods.org. Made it.
All right.
Thank you, Sandino.
Absolutely. Steve, any final words? Yeah.
Final words is, I think this is a great idea. Most everyone I've spoken to thinks it's a great idea. National monument here on the north coast of Santa Cruz. Free and open, accessible, enhanced. Taking a up close and personal look at some of the most rare plants and animals and most striking geographic, geologic, and hydrologic features on the north coast. I don't like to say it's a no-brainer. It's just a good idea. And all we need to do is persuade the President of the United States and Congress to do it.
No big deal.
We can do that.
Yeah, well, like you said, we got a quality product.
We can do that.
Yes, we can.
One last thing I'd like to do is say thank you to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for Voices from the Village and CTV for giving us this opportunity.
Absolutely.
Because it's
Shout out Charlie and Betsy Phillips.
Charlie and Betsy, thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
But
The whole
it's
crew here,
it's a
too.
community enterprise here, and it's a community undertaking we're engaged in, so thank
Great.
you very much.
Absolutely, and this show will be repeated, so your message will get out even further. You know, Stephen, Laura, Fred, really, thank you guys for coming on. I hope you will go to santacruzredwoods.org. Be sure to sign the petition, learn more about this amazing opportunity, and we will see you next time, Santa Cruz. I hope you have a wonderful evening, afternoon, morning, whenever you're watching this program. Have a good one. Take care.
Thank you.
Absolutely, guys.
I think you should put that on your car.
I'm in.
And maybe this button.